YouTube stream, and we will get this show on the road. Today is all about float necklaces, and it's an oldie but a goodie here at Beadshop, and I have some new tips and tricks for you about it, which I'm sure you're expecting. And just let me know, give me some thumbs up or a hello or something so I can see that, or I can know that you can hear me. So give me those and we will, I can see that. Perfect. Great. Well, let's get going then, shall we? Alrighty. Here we are. Alrighty, I said float necklaces on silk thread. We're taking it back. We're going to swing back to old school here on beadshop.com. And I have some samples that I'm going to share with you from our archives so you can see that. And then I have the sample, some of you saw it on our social, a little sneak peek, right? So I'm going to show you that one, and then we'll do all kinds of fun stuff with float necklaces today. I think you're going to enjoy it. So it looks like we've got Janice over on our YouTube feed, and it looks like we've got Gita commenting on our Facebook feed as beadshop.com. It's great to have you guys both here, and it looks like everybody's gathering around the old bead table. So let's just make sure that everyone is on, and then we're going to get started. Thank you. Someone commented, Patricia, thank you. My earrings. You guys saw me do these. I don't know, was it last Friday? I don't know. Time still has no meaning to me, right? But they're a fun one. I think I did these on Free Tip Friday. It was that ring knot that I did, and these were the earrings that I made, and they're really fun. And so I thought, you know what, Karen just photographed them and brought them back, so I thought it was time for me to wear them. So that's what I did. Looks like Emily is also on the feed over on Facebook as well. I want to let you guys know on tomorrow's Thursday, the 13th of August. You know that behind the scenes I've been trying to do some kind of like split screen stuff and some kind of fun new ways to broadcast. And so tomorrow at about approximately 2:30 Pacific time, Brittany and I and Emily, I know that you're on the Facebook feed. I was going to talk to you about it tonight when we have our call scheduled. Maybe Emily will be joining us, and we're going to play around with our split screen and inviting guests. So we're not going to really do anything but talk and probably screw around and figure out how this new streaming software works. So it's not going to be an amazing broadcast, but we will need a little bit of feedback from people watching to see how it's going to go. So that is tomorrow, the 13th of August, at about 2:30, give or take, probably take a little bit in the afternoon. So don't have any expectations. And who knows how it's going to turn out. Emily's saying, what? So I'll talk to you about it tonight when we have our scheduled call. Perfect. I'm also going to put on some lotion here, right? And so that's 11:30. Oh, that's late for you, Gita. Well, we don't expect you to be here at 11:30 tomorrow night. It's okay, unless you have a little bit of insomnia. So, but we're just going to practice and see how that works. So, a little bit of lotion. My lotion from Denmark from Gita makes me feel so international. And we are ready to go. It looks like we have a bunch of people here, and it's great to have so many new viewers. It's wonderful. And I also have you guys have this broadcast streaming in our group and actually on my Kate Richburg Jewelry Educator page as well. I'm not moderating those comments there. So it's, if you're on that page watching it that way, I'm not ignoring you, but we can only have so many screens open. So we've got the main screen open on our YouTube channel and on our Beadshop Facebook group. So, all right. That's our story. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Cindy, you just came on at 2:30 tomorrow Pacific time. We're doing a little bit of a practice broadcast. I'm going to be scheduling it after this broadcast, so you'll be able to see it scheduled, and you can set yourself a reminder. But we'll see. Hopefully, I'm going to have Brittany and maybe Emily, maybe. I'll talk to her about it, and we'll see how it goes. We're gonna see how broadcasting from multiple places with multiple guests are actually gonna work. Okay. Oh, and this lotion's pomegranate. I should have known. There's a little pomegranate right on here, but I didn't know what Grand Tabla means. I don't know. Someday, when we're in the same room, Gita, you'll teach me some great words, so that when I can, someday when I visit Denmark, I'll be able to speak a little bit, maybe. I don't know. I looked up how to say great and thanks and all that, and of course it's gone out of my head. But anyway, I digress. Let's take a look at, it looks like we've got a bunch of people on here now, so I can jump in to the project. Okay, so let me show you just real quick what we've got here, this sneak peek that you saw on our social. Let me center it there and click on over. And so there it is, and you can see I've done this float on purple thread, or it's called amethyst actually, if you want to be fancy. We call it amethyst on the website. And then it's a size 4, so I use a size 4 thread, okay? And I used a variety of beads. And this, again, a good one for stash diving if you have these, or have something similar. But of course, as always, on beadshop.com, you can go right to the website and take a look at the project and all of the ingredients that we used on the project. Okay, so what the formula is, or the recipe is for this thing, you're going to need a size 4, like I said, a size 4 thread, right? And I have one here that's unfurled, and we're going to talk about the size 4 silk, what we call silk thread with needle. Okay, and size 4 is a good middle of the road size. It fits the pearls, fits the seed beads, fits everything. So, and it's heavy enough so it looks pretty nice. Okay, you're going to need an 11/0, and this 11/0 that I am using, I will tell you, it is the Duracoat Galvanized Light Smoky Pewter, one of my favorites, the 4221. And then this is one of our newer green seed beads in size 8. That is the Matte Metallic Sage Green Luster. Look at that beautiful sage green matte. It's gorge. And then I've used our new, we just launched these, and they're in limited supply. I hope we can get some more of these green pearls back, because whenever we put green pearls up, you guys love them. The thing is with the green pearls, they're kind of hard to find. So, and we really want to make sure that they're a pretty green and not like a muddy green. So we're kind of particular about when we find them. But these are gorgeous, and we still had some in stock. I'm sure we still do. But you could substitute any of our pearls for this, right? Any color really will work, but it's the green pearl that I'm using here. And then I used a shadow bead, and I'm going to show you, the shadow is this little hexagon metal bead, right? For those of you who aren't in the know. And it has a nice large hole. All right, and I've used these in, I don't know, a million of my projects, right? You guys are all used to it. But I wanted something that moved around, right? That had a little bit of movement. So, you know those, you know how I like vintage jewelry, and if you don't, you do now. I love vintage. And you know, you see those brooches, right? That are called trembler brooches, or brooches that are en tremblant, right? It's a little brooch that has a spring on it, and then something is connected to that spring, so there's slight movement as you wear the brooch. Well, it's the same thing here. These are kind of en tremblant, right? With the shadows, they move around. And these pearls are about a 6 millimeter, I think, ish, about. Let me see if I can find there's my caliper. Let me measure them for you. It should say in the description, but I'll measure it hole to hole for you too, so you get an idea. So yeah, these are a little under 6 millimeter, right? And so they probably vary a little bit in size because they're freshwater pearls. Okay, so anywhere from a 5 to 6 mil, or even larger or smaller, whatever works for you. Okay. But the movement of these shadows is really what I wanted to happen with this. So you can see they kind of slide back and forth. Okay. So some of the float pieces we've done previously, and this was a project that Emily did for us back in the day, right? And so you can see this silk float necklace, these ones that Emily did. We're going to look at these also that have the 2 strands here. And let me raise it up so you can see it a little bit. These, I think, are a larger. They have the semi-precious beads on them. So I think Emily might have used a size 6 thread on this. Just to my eye, it looks a little bit thicker, a little bit heavier. And can you see for the closure, we're going to do a traditional end tip for what I've got going on. But can you see what Emily did here? You can see if I can get it under the camera. There we go, sorry. That she silk wrapped the end and added the button. And then there's a loop on the other side that's also been silk wrapped. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my spatial relationships here today in this camera. But you can see how she's also silk wrapped it there at that end. And so this doubled up strand of silk on the needle also works great as a float. And you can see that each little section, the beads are captured on there, so there is movement. Now you can see she's done it here with this blue one, and she did it here with this tiny one with the seed beads on it. Can you see that? This makes, and I'm going to pull this to the center, okay, so you can see it. And so I'm going to bring it to the middle here, just so you can, because I think this is such a cool idea. And it's a great way to kind of make a beaded chain almost, without, I don't know, having to peyote stitch or, I don't know, wire wrap or whatever. But this is a size 4. You can see that with an 11/0 seed bead. And it just starts here at the end with an end tip, right? Clamshell end tip. And then the 2 are tied together, and then they're opened, and a seed bead, a size 11, is put on one of the strands. Okay, so it looks really nice, I think. Okay, and then the shadows, Jonathan's asking the size of shadows that I used. I used the regular shadows, but you could use the small shadows, the little shadows as well. On this one, you can see the one that Emily did that has the semi-precious with it. I'll hold it up so you can see it. She used the smaller shadows. So let me get a regular shadow right here. And you can see how those compare to the smaller ones there. Okay. So, so that's it. And so this is also a size 6 thread. And so the shadows have such a large hole that they'll go on a thicker thread. Let me give you a closer up view of that loop and button. Might be a little bit easier for you to see if I hold it up here. Can you see that? How that's been silk wrapped? And the loop captures the button, and the other loop is just a loop for the button. And then the ends of that, Emily didn't cut it away. She just left the tails and then fringed the ends of the silk like so. Okay, so that's it. And then I have, let me show you this one. Let me move it over to the camera there. Let me see if you guys can see that. So this one here is a lariat that I did in the same style. And back in the day when we did this float, so you can see I used a size 4, and it's a lariat, right? It's not a closed up strand with a clasp. So these are worn in front. And the lariat, what I used to kind of unify this is I used an 8, a 6, a 4, and then you could use a little shadow, but what I used is one of those 2mm hematite cubes. Okay, let me bring this to the center as well so you can really see it up close. I love it, and I used all of the long strand of thread, just like I used all of the thread for this guy here. Let me move this out of the way because I want to show you. I just love this necklace. I love it, love it, love it, love it. And it really unifies it using just a monochromatic palette with just the matte lapis is what I used here. And then can you see how I connected it at the end? We're going to be doing some wire wrapping here also, but let me show you. I used just the regular end tip, the cup end tip, and then I wire wrapped a dangle and attached it to that cup. So that's the bottom of the lariat. Now you wear this lariat just like you would a scarf, right? You wrap it several times around your neck or once or however you want to do it. Okay, so it's a pretty way, I think, to make a float. The thing about these though, when you make these and store them, I don't usually recommend hanging necklaces, though we have our archive hanging. But this is one that you definitely want to hang up, right? Because since there's thread, these necklaces can get tangled pretty easily, right? So you want to be careful when you're storing these. These just don't go tossed into a drawer. Some of my jewelry, I'm looking at you, right? But these want to actually be hung up, okay? So that's that one. So let's take a look at the project we're going to work on today. So I've literally stopped here at the last component, the last section I was knotting, okay? And I haven't done any measuring or figuring out of length. I thought I'd save that for you guys. So this is going to be super off the cuff, literally, when I do this, okay? So I'm going to get rid of my little trays so that my beads don't go flying everywhere. And with the pearls so far on this, and I'm going to measure this for you, I used the entire strand and I still have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I've got 11 pearls left, which is great. I can use them in something else, but I'm also going to use them when I close this off, okay? So, so we have plenty. One strand is plenty. This silk thread on the needle, we have it in a multitude of sizes, all the way from size 2 all the way up to size 8. We added the size 8. And the colors are gorgeous. And the way that this thread is, it's a little bit hard to see, but I want you guys to see it. It's a twist, okay? So if, let me do this on the end of this one. It comes on a card like this, right? And when you unfurl it from the card, it has a bend to it, right? A little crimp in it. Well, what I do is I actually stretch this silk thread, and you've seen me do it on other broadcasts. So what I do is I leave the thread actually in the card, right? The end right here, captured in the card. And I put the card on the ground. And then I put my foot on it, right? And then, so it holds it in place, and then I stretch. You can't see me stretching all of it, but my hand's gonna come by here. And I'm stretching. Not super, like a huge amount of stretching, but you can see if here I'm on the front, I've got my card on the floor, my foot's on it, and I'm just pulling it a little bit, right? And that pull will pull out the crimp, and it'll also give a little bit of stretch to this thread, and it'll take the thread out. You can't see because I'm wearing kind of a purple color, but let me show you under the center camera again, okay? So you can see I pulled out all of that crimp, okay? So at the end, what I wanted to show you, so here's the end of the thread, right? And we always use our thread, push our beads down to the end because there's a needle permanently affixed to the other side, right? So that needle, we want to make sure that if we have thread left over from our project, that it's down at the open end, because when we cut our thread away, we still want to have that needle attached to the spare length of thread, okay? So this is all size 4 that I'm using, and the length is 2 meters, which is a little over 2 yards of thread, okay? So, so that's that story. So the end, you can see it's actually 2 strands of thread, and I'm going to unfurl it a little bit so you can see it. See how it's 2 strands like this that have been twisted. A wire needle goes to the center length of the thread, and then this thread is twisted below that needle. So it's a really seamless join here. So it gets a little fatter here, and it is a little bit of a fatigue point. And you can see with all of this stringing, my thread is getting just a little bit ratty, but it's not too bad, right? You want to make sure that you use the right size beads for this, because if your beads are too small and you keep passing them over the needle onto the thread, this will wear pretty quickly as you're stringing, okay? But if your beads just slide on over it, you're going to be fine, okay? So that's what it is. It's just a doubled over strand of thread that's been twisted, okay? And so can you see how nice and finished that twist is? So whenever I do float necklaces on silk, this is my thread of choice, because the thread looks like a little miniature cord, like a little twisted cord, okay? So we carry this in size 2, 4, 6, and size 8. And then the smaller 2 is smaller, and the 8 is the largest, okay? So we carry, there are a lot of different sizes that you can get, but we've found that this 2, 4, 6, and 8 will be plenty to work with, okay? So, so let me show you how to start this up, okay? Well, let me measure. First, let me measure this finished one that I was making yesterday in anticipation of our broadcast. So at the end, and I'm going to show you how to do this in a second, okay? This has the little end tip there, right? And no knot between the end tip and your first bead. And then I'm going to go here and I'm going to measure, okay? And then let me keep going. I'm going to keep going and keep going and keep going. I've got about 55 inches of cord here, right? So with the knots and everything, it does take up a little bit of length. And I'm going to wrap this around my neck. I could multiple times as a multiple strand, but I also may want to wear it as a wrap around my wrist. So let me see how this looks. And I don't want to wrap it too tight. I need a little bit of room there. So I just want to see, yeah, that's going to be perfect. See, my closure is here. And so I need enough room for the closure I'm going to make, plus the clasp. So I'm about maybe 2 inches shy of what I want. Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to undo it. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside for just a moment. And as I said, it's about 55 inches. And I'm going to show you how to start this. So let me get a little tighter. Okay, there we go. So I unwind the thread, I stretch it out, and I'm gonna just tie a knot here at the end. I'm gonna tie an overhand knot, which is a loop like this, and I'm gonna put my end through the loop. And now I'm gonna do this a second time, okay? So that my knot is fat enough once. That went once. I think I missed going through twice. So my knot is fat enough so it doesn't pull through the end tip. Okay, so I'm going to tighten that up. And see what a nice fat knot that is? Okay. If I did this and I tried to tie a single knot, right, like this, you've seen me do this before, and I think, oh, this is, it's a little small maybe. I'm going to tie another strand over the top of that, or another knot over the top of it, right? It's really hard to kind of get that knot right on top of the first knot to make a nice fat juicy knot, right? So what you end up having is you're like, oh, okay, oh, there's two knots. Well, let me do another one and I'll try and get them all together, right? And then all of a sudden you have like this giant kind of wonky, funky looking knot, right? So just as you're making your initial loop, pass it through once and pass it through twice. Okay, and that's it. I'm going to cut this unsightly knot off so that we don't have to look at it, right? And I'm going to add an end tip. Now we've got two different types of end tips. We've got a clamshell end tip, which is like a little clamshell, right? It's a two little shells like this that are connected at the bottom, and there's a hook up at the top, right? And so those clamshells close over your knot and the knot sits in them. And it looks like this one that Emily did on this piece right here. Okay, but sometimes I feel like the clamshell is too big. Okay, so I use the regular little the regular old school just plain end tip, right? Not the clamshell. So you can see that right there. So the clamshell, what you do to put it on is you want to think that the little cup of the end tip here, right? That cup comes up and around the knot, right? So you want to put it on in the correct direction, okay? So the hook, or you also want to think about the hook of the end tip wants to be pointing away from your necklace, right? Because this hook is going to attach onto your clasp eventually, okay? So I'm going to come in with the needle of my thread, right? That's attached to my silk. I'm going to get it through there. And these end tips don't have giant holes, but they have a nice generous hole, okay? So it'll work for all of your threads. And I'm going to pop it on like that, and I'm going to walk it all the way, walk it, walk it, walk it, all the way to the other end, and see how your knot is fitting nicely in there. So that doubled over overhand knot is what you want, okay? So now we also don't want this knot to come unfurled, okay? So we need to glue it down. Now we've got the GS Hypo, which is, whoops, out of frame, Richburg, there we go. We've got the GS Hypo, which is what I'm going to use, okay? We also have Zap, and the Zap, what I'm not going to use is the Zap glue, and I'll show you, where did that knot, did I throw it already? Did I throw it to the ground? I probably did, so I can't show you, but if I were using the Zap glue, okay, and adding it to this knot, it would run down the thread, though it's pretty viscous. It really mostly stays where you put it, but it will harden your thread so much that it may cause your thread later on down the road to have some issues. Okay, so put your zap away and get out your GS Hypo, which is a little more, it's a little easier on your thread to use. We've been having a discussion in the group, our Bead Table Beadshop group, which if you're not a member of, please come over and take a look and join us. It's over on Facebook. You just give a search to the Bead Table, beadshop.com. Because it's always so hard to put this little needle right back into the tip of that glue, right? So there it is, there it goes. I feel around sometimes with that tip, and then I can put it in, and then I push it down, okay? So that, and you can see that glue is staying exactly where I've put it, and I put a little drop cloth under there, my little plastic baggie, right? So it doesn't get on my velvet pad. And that's gonna dry. I'm gonna let it dry overnight, right? So that the knot bonds together. So that when I come in and I clip my thread right up to this knot, the knot isn't gonna unfurl because silk is springy, right? So this knot will eventually, if you don't glue it down, the knot will eventually wanna unknot itself, okay? So I'm gonna slide this down, and for now, that knot's just gonna live in there. We're not gonna worry. Now, the pattern that I made, okay, was really simple. I used an 11-aught, right, because I just wanted to make a single knot with this thread. So I needed a little stopper knot so that my beads wouldn't jump over the knot and come loose, okay? So if you look at this size 8-aught bead, can you see what a big, look, I can get my tweezers right in there. The whole size is really big, right? So with the knot size that I'm tying, it would have just jumped over the knot like these shadows would have. So the 11-aughts are there really to act as stoppers next to my knot. And I added a little bit of silver so it would add a little bit of sparkle to this piece. And so I mixed my metals. Bright copper, the galvanized pewter, and then for the closure and the other things I'm going to use, I'm actually going to go down to the antiqued copper. Okay? So I'm going to put on my section. So my section is an 11-aught. So I'll put that on. My 8-aught. Then my pearl. And the pearls also have a pretty small hole, but they fit perfectly on this size 4. Okay? So I'll pull those on and see how they just go right on the thread. I'll put on my 8 and then my 11. Okay, so no knot between the end tip and your first bead. Okay? So it just sits right up against it, just like that. Now we're going to tie the knot. Now you've seen me do this a bunch of different times, right? Let me get a little bit wider here so you can see my hands, what my hands are doing. You can use your awl, you can use your knotting tweezers, you can use neither, you can use both, whatever works for you, okay? But basically the knot, what the knot is it's an overhand knot just like I knotted here at the end, okay? So you get a little, you just get your strand, right? And you take your, I'm going to do it on this side because this is shorter here. You make a loop and you put that end through the loop. Now your knot is tied, okay? Now the trick, this is when the trick happens, right? You've got to do 2 things. 1, get the extra thread out of the knot, and 2, get the knot down to where that bead is. Okay, those are your 2 goals. And I'm going to use my knotting tweezer for that, but I'll show you how to use the awl too. But the knotting tweezer is my favorite one for this. Okay, the knotting tweezer has a nice tapered, you can see if I kind of put it between my fingers, it's a nice tapered tip here. Okay. And what I do with these knotting tweezers is I come in, I'm right-handed, so I'm holding it with my right hand. I grab the inside, one leg goes inside the knot, right? and one leg goes outside the knot over here, okay? And I grab those two threads where I want that knot to end up, right? If I wanted my knot to end up over here, that's where I'd grab it, but I don't. I want it to grab right there by my beads. And these sections that you're knotting, you guys, you want them to be visually tight, but they don't need to be super tight so that this section doesn't move, right? You want to have a little bit of play in there so that these sections aren't overly stiff and make your necklace sit funny, okay? So here it is. I've grabbed one leg on the inside, one on the outside, close the tweezers around the thread gently so there's a little bit of room to pull the thread, okay? Now see these tips? I'm going to push my tips into my velvet pad so that my thread can't come out, right? So I'm going to lay them in. Now I'm going to pull on this long thread and see how that knot just tightens up as if it were magic, okay? And I'm going to kind of rotate that thread, kind of go back and forth, get it right close to the tip. Then I'm going to stop. I'm not going to pull on it anymore. I'm going to take my tweezers out. Now let me get really tight here so you can see this. Okay. Here they are. Here it is. Can you see how my knot is loose? See, there's an opening there. That's a good thing, because what I can do is I can get that tip of my tweezer and kind of pull it down just a little bit more so it's a little closer to my bead. Now watch what I do. I put my tweezer below that knot, and with my left hand, my left index finger and thumb, I'm going to grab my thread. I'm going to, at the same time, pull my thread towards me and push my knot away, but in a gentle motion. Okay? Like that. That's it. And look how your knot just goes, hey, I'm going to slide right where I want it. Okay? There you go. So now let's tie another knot. Yeah, I've been doing this for like over 20 years, so I make it look easy. But just practice. It's super easy. And if you have a little bit of room in this section, right? Who cares? No one's gonna look how many sections you have on this thing here. One little skosh of space there isn't gonna make or break your piece, all right? So just relax. Seriously, we've got enough to worry about. So now what I did was for the float, so it had a little bit of movement to it, right? I'm gonna put on one of these shadows. So here comes this shadow bead. It's big, see that whole size is big, okay? Comes in, just comes on, and it just kind of sits there. I'm not gonna worry about it too much. I'm just gonna let it do its thing. And then I'm gonna tie my next knot. So I'm gonna kind of eyeball it. What I do is, after I put the shadow on, I kind of grab above the shadow with my index finger and my thumb, and I can kind of feel where I want that to be, right? Using my fingers as the measurer, kind of. And as I tighten it, so there's my loop, right? I've tied my knot. Then here, and you could mark a little piece on your paper or whatever, but if you look at mine really closely, I didn't, okay? And you can see some maybe are just a touch longer, some are a touch shorter, right? But these sliding shadows will hide a multitude of sins. So this necklace is not a stress out necklace. Just let this sucker flow, okay? So I'm gonna kind of eyeball it and go, you know what? I want my knot about right here. So I'm gonna grab my threads about right there with my tweezer, okay? So this leg of the tweezer goes inside the knot. The other leg goes on the outside. I grab it kind of firmly but loosely, right? And I bury the tips into my velvet pad. And this time I don't push the knot away. I just kind of tighten the knot around the head of the tweezer. And then I'll take the tweezer out and tighten the knot. Okay. Now this knot is small, so see how your shadow pops right over it. So sometimes what I did when I was making this other one here, I would tie the knot and I go, oh, I forgot to add the shadow. Well, it doesn't matter. You can add it after you tie the knot because the shadow just goes right over it. Okay. So I'm going to do my next section of beads, and that was an 11 knot, an 8 aught, a pearl, and then the same thing in reverse, an 8 aught and an 11 aught. And you can see if I didn't have this 11 aught, that knot is nice, but it's not big enough, okay, to hold your 8 aughts on. So you need a tiny little bead as your stopper. So again, that's what that 11 aught was all about. So here it is. I push this all the way down, get this out of the way, and let me tie it for you again. So control your thread. You don't have to work with the long piece of thread that's down here, right? Just make your knot, make your loop, and then this is short, a short piece. You can just dip it in the loop and pull it through. It's just a little overhand knot. Now let's say that you were like way over here, right? You tied this knot and you're like, oh, it's so far I'm even out of frame, right? So far. Doesn't matter, right? Don't freak out. You can unknot it if you want, or you can just walk it down. So I'll close my tweezers, or you could use your awl, and you could just say, hey knot, go where I want you to go. Okay? Push it down with the tips. That's it. And then keep it all loose. If your knot is loose, then you won't get into trouble. Okay? So let's tighten this frame up and tighten the knot. Okay? So one leg inside the loop, and it doesn't matter if the loop is to your left or to the right, right? It doesn't matter. As long as one leg is on the inside, one leg is on the outside. And it's exactly where you want that knot to be formed. Bury the tips of that tweezer into your velvet pad and tighten the knot down. Okay? And I give it that little bit of up and down motion. Now, take all of the pressure off the thread and pull it out. And this looks like it's at about the right place. It's enough slack in that knot so that when I push the knot away from me and the thread towards me, it sits exactly where I want it. Okay? That's it. And we'll put our next shadow bead on. Okay, so I'll do that. And we're going to tie, we'll tie our next one. Okay, now a lot of times the way I do this, to just go really quick, and it's kind of a modified version of how Janice does her hand knotting class. And those of you who have been to our bead retreat have practiced this hand knotting with us together. Okay. What I do is I grab my thread, kind of where I want my knot to eventually be, wrap it around my hand. I just cross it over my finger, and then I put this end through. Okay. Then I tighten that knot kind of wherever I want it to be, because I already have my knot here. I'll tighten it kind of wherever I want it. I'll kind of pinch my finger over that knot, and then I'll just tighten it, though that was a little bit of a mess there. But I felt the mess happening, so I stopped before everything got too tight so I can fix that knot. There we go. Hold my fingers where I want that knot, and if I need help walking it down, I can use my tweezers. Okay, so let's get another section of beads, and then we're going to talk about some variations on a theme for this. Okay, so here's this, and here's this. Oops, come on. An 11, an 8, a pearl, an 8, and an 11. Maybe. There we go. Okay, let me get these pearls out of the tweezers out of the way. This goes on. And Janice has her pearl knotting handout. It's in our, so there you go. Yeah, I was showing off a little bit there. I did it all by hand. Fast. But try out the tweezer method first. But we do have in our skill builders, we have a lot of great tips on knotting pearls, right? You don't need a special knotting tool. I know some of you probably have it, and some of you probably love it. So do what you do, right? You do you, what works for you. But I find that a knotting tool, one of those knot tying tools, is just cumbersome. It doesn't work for me, really. But I learned the old school way, right? That's kind of me. So let me show you. So what I'm going to do, because I'm going to finish it off on this end, I'm going to show you some tricks with like the doubled over strand. So just bear with me here. I'm going to cut this section. I know, collective gasp, but don't worry. There you go. Done. So we'll move our little friend over here. And if I were going to do a doubled over strand in an end tip, okay, what I would do is I'd get my end tip. Where is it? Here it is. And I'd start by coming up. This time I'd have nothing on my thread. Let me get a little tighter so you can see it. I'd come up through my end tip, and I'd bring my end tip, let me just measure so I'm at the center of the thread. There we go. It's about right here. So I'm in the middle of my thread. I've got one length that doesn't have any needle on it at all. My end tip is sitting in the middle. And I could just come in that center point and tie a knot. I'd go through once and go through twice. I love that Cindy Brooke is saying she's knotted using a toothpick. Totally. You could knot using a toothpick or a skinny nail or, yeah, whatever helps you get that knot where you need it, right? So here's this. And you tighten that down, okay? So now the end tip, remember I came up through the bottom of the end tip? Now I'm going to go back down through the end tip, and that knot that I put in acts like a little stopper. So in this way I can just use one card of thread, right? I don't have to use two cards. Though you could simply just knot two of them together and throw them through. Okay? So now you have two strands coming out of that end tip. Now you have one end that has a needle on it and one end that doesn't. So the beads, when you do this, the beads just go on the strand that has the needle, right? So let's say that we're just making a simple little float, right? So I'm just going to come in, I'm just going to use these 8/0 for fun. Okay, I'm going to put the 3 8/0 on. Patty's asking, could I use Chinese knotting cord? You sure could, as long as the Chinese knotting cord won't have a needle on the end, obviously, right? So you either want to stiffen the needle at the end using Zap glue, right? Or use a separate needle like this flexible eye right here, like this, the flexible eye needle. And you just need to make sure that whatever beads you're choosing fit on the cord. Okay, so here's this. I bring these two together and I'm going to tie these two cords as if they were one. I'm going to give it a little bit of room. I'm going to bring this through, tie it, and again, it doesn't really matter where this knot ends up. so much, but you treat these two cords, pull them as if they were one, okay? And yeah, like Janice is saying, you would have to do the closure a little bit differently. You could use a crimp or some other method, that the silk wrap closure, something like that with it. Okay, so here's that section. Let me get the end with the needle. I'll put on my 3/8 again. Slide them on, and then you kind of want to keep all of this fairly tight-ish so that you don't have one strand that's a lot, you know, like this, that's a lot looser than the other, right? I kind of measure with my eyes, right? I think Yvette's asking, could I bead the cord ahead of time for this one? I would probably say no. I mean, there's probably a way that you can kind of work around it and slide the beads around, but I think it's more trouble than it's worth, honestly, in that case. So see, just leave a little bit of space, and then I have a little bit of room here. Okay, so I'll do it one more time. Get the end with the needle. Put my beads on. And slide them down and tie the knot. There it is, and tighten it up. And again, these segments don't have to be exactly the same, right? If someone is all up on your float necklace, they shouldn't be criticizing the sections of your float, right? So that's how you do that. Okay, super easy. Then when you go to close it, what I would do firsthand, if I were putting in an end tip, I'd probably put a little bit of glue on this open end, like that, to stiffen it up. And then, I think I've got another end tip here. Then I'd slide that end tip on first, the one without the needle. Let me see if I can get it in there without it being stiffened. No. So let me use another needle and let's see if that'll work. We want to do this side first. So I'm going to put my thread through my wire needle here, and I'm going to go through my end tip, this time coming up from the bottom, and then I go through that end tip, and see, it wants to come through. It's tight, so I'm like, yeah, just kind of be careful as you pull it through. Okay, so there's that one. Then I can come in, I take this needle off, and I'll get my second needle, and I'll go through the hole in the end tip, trying not to split the thread. Okay. And then I go through, and so see how that comes through now. If I had put the one with the needle through first, I wouldn't have had enough room to get this silk cord doubled with the needle, right? So now I'll just slide this sucker down. And obviously I should have had another section of beads here, right? Okay, but let's just pretend that I do. There's no knot, I would just have beads. And then I would tie an overhand knot. Once. And down into the cup. And then I do the reverse, right over left, left over right. Get my hypo cement, my glue, put it on the knot, tighten the other half of the knot down over that glue and glue this top, okay? And let it sit overnight, okay? Then you can come in and clip away your extra threads, okay? Which I'm gonna do right there just to do that. So you've seen how I've done this doubled over and this one here, okay? So let's take a look now at the actual project, how to close it off, okay? And I'm gonna actually free up this end tip because I need it. So what I've got here, I've got my last, I'm going to do one more section, I think, here. I think I measured this at 55 inches, so I've got about 2 inches to play around with. I also have, I have some little decorations here that I haven't quite put on yet either. So I need to kind of figure where I might want those to go as well, okay? So I'm gonna, before I do this, I'm gonna wire wrap this briolette so it's ready to go. I could simply string it on the thread, but I think I want it to hang a little bit. You can use 22 or 24 gauge in the wire. Here's the 24 gauge. I just want to show you how that looks through it. And here's the 26. Okay, they'll both work. I'm going to use the 24. I think I want something a little more substantial, but it honestly doesn't make any difference. I'm just going to cut a piece. Now we have a great skill builder on beadshop.com about how to wire wrap this briolette. So I'm not going to belabor it too much, but essentially I get my 24 gauge piece of wire. I don't know, it's about 5 inches of wire probably. I want plenty to work with. I'm going to bring my 24 gauge so that it crosses over the top of the briolette. Note how there's a little bit of space there. The briolettes that we carry are a really nice quality, okay? So there's a lot of space between the hole and the tip of the briolette, okay, which makes them a little bit stronger, but it's still fragile right here, okay? So you want to make sure that, and the wire is unyielding, right? The wire is rigid. So if I came in and really just flattened this wire right up next to that briolette, you're going to crack the hole, okay? So you want to just bend it to the side, have a little bit of space there. Now where that X crosses here, see that? I bring in the tips of my plier and I'm just going to close the tips, and that gives me a nice triangular shape over the tip of the briolette, okay? Now I'm going to choose this longer wire. They're both pretty long, but I'm going to choose the longer wire, bend that down. That's the one I'm going to wrap with, do the wire wrapping with, okay? So let me get my round. You can see I've left a little neck there. I've just bent that wire over the tips of my pliers. Now I need to, this wire that I've made the bend with, I'm going to insert my round nose pliers with the heads one on top of the other and the briolette dangling below. I'm going to bring that wire up and over the top, okay? I'm going to flip my plier up, pull my wire underneath, and now this wire is going to wire wrap both of those little wires that are coming up from the triangle that you've just formed. So here's that, and I'm going to use my hands. I'm just going to go around, and you want to wire from the bottom of the loop to the top of that little triangle at the point of the briolette. You don't want to go too tight. You still want to have some movement. Now this long piece here, you're going to pull that down at an angle, and you're going to come in and clip that one away, being very careful not to nick the loop. And I'm going to come in here and clip that away. So I can use my bent chain nose to kind of push that little end in, straighten up my loop. I actually want my loop, I think, to be facing me, I guess. I don't know. Well, maybe not. Maybe I want it to the side. So I need to be really careful when I'm moving this wire, because too much movement on this wire, you're going to fatigue it and it'll break. So there, that's it. So my briolette's wrapped and it's ready to go. Okay. So now I need to figure how I'm going to close this up. So I'm not, and as I said, I've got about 2 inches. I need to make up about 2 inches here. So I haven't made any decisions about length. So I need to start thinking about that. So on one side of my necklace, or multiple wrap bracelet, I'm going to use this swivel clasp. This is the small swivel, I believe, is what I got. What did I tell you to get? Let me see. Yeah, the small swivel, right? And then it needs to go into something. So I could use a jump ring, I could use a piece of chain link, I could use whatever I really wanted to use here. But I knew that I was going to have some beads left over. So what I'm going to do, like it was the Bead Olympics, I'm going to wire wrap a few of these to make an adjustable chain on the end. Where are my head pins? So I'm going to start here with one that has a head pin. And again, in our skill builders, we have some wire wrap basics that will get you through the wire wrapping. I'm going to talk through it a little bit, but I'm going to go kind of fast here. I'm going to go not quite at Kate speed, but this pearl might have something in it. Let me check it going from the other side. Sometimes when they're drilled, there's a little jog in there, so that one might be for stringing and not for wire. Let's check this one. This one works just fine. Okay. So I'll put, this is going to be the end of my wire wrap chain. I'm just going to do like maybe 3 or 4 beads. Okay. So again, like the briolette, grab it right at the top of the bead hole and bend that head pin up and over the top of the wire. It leaves you a little neck that you're going to come and wire wrap around eventually, but we're going to come in with our round nose plier, placing it, I don't know, about 1/8 of an inch up from the tip of the tool, depending on the size of the loop you want. I'm going to come up and over the top of that plier to form the round loop. Flip my pliers up to give me some space there to pull this wire underneath. And I'm going to center that loop right over the top of the bead. Okay. I'm going to switch hands here because I'm going to wrap with my dominant hand this time. And I'm going to get my bent chain nose plier and I'm going to come in and I'm just going to go around from the bottom of the loop to the top of the bead hole. Okay, so that you will have a nice row of neat little wraps. Kind of tilt it down so you expose the neck here, and we're just going to wrap in a series of 180-degree or thereabouts turns, right? So there's the second one. Let me come around the 3rd time, and you can also use your finger if you feel like that's better. And it looks like it wants one more wrap. Okay, there it is. Now, I'm going to kind of straighten that loop out. Get my wire cutter, wedge the tip right in there, being careful not to nip the loop here. Clip away that extra. Hang on to that wire so you don't accidentally hit yourself in the head or the eye with it, right? You want to control that wire. And see how that loop is bent over just a little? Grab your chain nose and straighten it out. Okay, so there's the bottom of my link. So let me get some more 24 gauge. And wire wrap, I'm going to wire wrap, I don't know, maybe 2 more. Okay, so again, I'm going to go kind of fast. Bend at an angle. Like that time at the beginning of quarantine, remember how I did the wire Olympics when I wire wrapped things closed? Right? How many wire wraps could I do in 5 minutes? Now, before I wire wrap this closed, right, what do I have to do? I have to add this link because I don't want it to have a jump ring in there. I could connect it with a jump ring, but I want these loops to be an all-inclusive loop, right? Nice and tight so they don't open. And so I'm just going to use that little tail to wire wrap with. I guess I could have left myself a little more wire to work with, but that's all right. You can use your fingers or your tool, whatever works for you. But once I've got about 3 wraps there, I'll come in, clip away my extra. And I'm going to straighten everything out, tuck in that little wire end so it doesn't scratch. There we go. Tighten it all up. If I need to bring these little coils together, I can, just by squeezing it with the side of my plier. We'll put on my pearl. There we go. Bend at the top. Up and over. Down underneath. Nothing to put in this loop, so I can just come in and wire wrap it. Okay. Clip away your extra. Tuck that end in, straighten it up. So now I can take a look and see, like lengthwise, how this is going. Okay, so I probably, I don't know, maybe a couple more here, and then I have this closure. And I still want to incorporate these dangles here, right? So I think what I might do, I kind of like how that dangle sits. Let's see what it looks like if I put it there in between this A-dot. Right, and it kind of sits off there nicely. That's kind of nice. I could also attach it to what I'm wire wrapping over here, but I don't know, I kind of like it here at the end. There's enough movement, I think, that it'll be okay. So I'm just going to capture it right there. Why not? I'm getting really short on my thread. Can you see that? Super short. Now I need my little slider. So I'll put that on. And I'll make one more section, and I think I'll put the heart on that section. But you decide where you want to put it. So there's that. My 11. My 8. Let's see if this one that didn't work through the wire, let's see. Yeah, it goes on the thread just fine, so I'll use it there. Now my heart. See how it's sitting up next to that pearl? Now this loop is kind of big, so I want to see if it's going to jump over the A-dot. If it does, then I might use 2 pearls. And it actually, I think, is okay. But see, it also, see how, I don't know, it's awkward. Next to this pearl, it doesn't leave it enough room here. So I'm gonna ditch the pearl, and I think I might just put this heart in between two 8/0. Let's see what that looks like. There we go. See how much better that component looks without the pearl? So I'm gonna go with that. And also tapers it down just a little. Now I also need to decide, is this gonna be my ending? Am I gonna put my am I gonna put one more little section there to make it close? Or am I gonna add my end tip right next to that charm? And I think if I add my end tip next to this charm, it's also gonna sit awkwardly. Okay, so I'm just gonna tie this one closed. Look at how much, so almost no thread left, right? So let's tighten that one down. Might as well add one more shadow to slide around. This is the last knot we need to tie because we're going to put our last section on. And see on this end, see how much, I mean, I really went far when I tied my knot here. I could have tied my knot a little closer to the end of the thread, so I was a little reckless there, but I've got enough thread here. So my 11, my 8, my pearl, my 11, I'm sorry, my 8, and then my 11, okay? Now, no knot between this one and my end tip. So let's put the end tip on. And notice, see how I went, when I started, I went through the cup, I went the opposite way, right? I went through the cup of the end tip going this way, so my knot was held in the cup. Here I want to go from the bottom, from underneath the cup and down, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie my knot into the cup. Now this always baffles people. How in the world are you going to get that knot all the way down into the cup of that end tip? This is when the beauty of this being a doubled over thread comes into play. Okay, now I'm going to hear the collective gasp heard around the world, right? I'm going to cut the needle off because I'm done. The needle can go, right? And this, I don't know, maybe this is 2 inches worth of thread here. Okay, so I'm going to clip it so I've got a nice length here. Here I go, 1, 2, 3, done. And I'm going to untwist this thread. Remember how at the beginning of the broadcast we talked about how this thread is a doubled over thread? And so you can really see it here with the needle, okay, like this. You can see here how when I untwist it, see how it goes through, the needle is put on it right there. See that? So that's what that looks like. So here we're just gonna, I like to hold one kind of taut and the other one I just untwist and untwist. Now remember from also earlier in the broadcast from this guy, I don't know where it went, that little sampler I made, this one. When I tied that overhand knot, the square knot, right over left, left over right, into the cup of the end tip, we're going to do the same thing here. Okay, so I get my left hand cord and I go through once And I'm going to go through twice because now this cord is a lot skinnier, right? Because I'm using only half, right? It's split up into two. So I go down into the end tip. Then I go from the right, I get my right hand thread, and I go through, going through once, going through twice. Now before I tighten anything, this is where I add my glue. Okay, so there's my knot, so I'm just going to let it sit there. I'm going to add a drop of glue into the end tip on the knot. Now I'm going to tighten my knot so it's tightened on the glue. And dot it on there. Okay. Tighten it up. Now, if this were real jewelry making time and not demo jewelry making time, okay, I would let it sit overnight, okay, and not disturb it at all. But, oh, and I want to have a little, did I put any glue on this one? I don't know that I did. So I'm just gonna put, it's best to add the glue right when you tie the knot into the end tip, even when it begins and ends, because the silk can kind of bloom, right? Open up a little bit. So you don't want your knot to loosen, and that glue will keep it from loosening. I'm going to just cut a little bit away. I'll come in and I'll cut it a little bit later. Okay. So this is where I'm going to add my closures. Okay. I'm going to wire wrap very quickly one more pearl because I need 3 on there. 2 just isn't cutting it for me. So bear with me here while I just wire wrap one more section. Might as well. Anything worth doing is doing it correctly, right? And Paulette, the reason I'm not tying a knot between the end tip and the bead, number one, this 11 knot is so small, right, that the knot will just kind of sit against it and move around and look kind of funny visually. And the knot doesn't add anything strength-wise, right? It just gives you a little space there that I don't think is as visually pleasing as just running your bead right up next to the end tip. But that's my preference, right? So you can decide what works for you. But I have found that that works for me. So I make my loop. Grab that loop there. And again, go to beadshop.com, go to our skill builders, right? And you can find a bunch of basic tips about everything from wire wrapping like I'm doing here, to the briolette, to pearl wrapping, pearl knotting like we did today. A whole bunch of stuff is over there. The macrame knot from Brittany, all of it. Seed bead school from Emily, it's all there. Get my pearl. Talk about using every, look, I've got 2 pearls left for a pair of earrings, right? Right? So here's this, bend it, up and over, down underneath, center it. Now I'm not going to put anything inside that loop, so I'm just going to wire wrap it. Clip away my extra. Push that little knot, or that little stray piece of wire in there. So now, this is going to come in, and I want you to really see this, right? So you can see it. The way that this end tip closes, if I turn it to the side, can you see how the little hook, it's aiming for the inside of the cup? Okay? So I'm going to get my my bent chain nose right here, and very, very carefully, without collapsing it, I'm just going to coax that hook right on down, kind of between the knot and the lip of the cup of the end tip. Since this hook is it's wide, can you see it's got some width to it, and the loop that it makes is so small, it's not going to pull open, right? I mean, this connection is nice and tight. Okay, so there's that. Now on this one, I could connect this clasp, connects really perfectly right there. But you could also, especially if you needed a little extra length, so let me wrap it around my wrist again, and let's see where we are with it. And then I can add it or not if it's not needed. On a necklace, it doesn't matter, right? Because this, we know this is going to be probably fine for a necklace. I'm not really sure. Sorry, I'm going to get my wrist a little bit closer to me so I can wrap it effectively. But if it's a necklace, it doesn't really matter, right? Because you're going to, it'll kind of settle wherever, sit wherever you want it to sit. But if you're wrapping this around your wrist, it has to fit. So sorry, here, you're just looking at that little clasp right now. So just bear with me as I wrap this around a couple of times. And if it's too big or too small or whatever, it's fine. You can take away or add your beads at the end. But you can see here, when I come in with my clasp, no you can't, there we go. When I come in and I attach my clasp, let me see if I can hook it in there with one hand. I'll come in and I'll attach it here. I've got a little bit of slack here, but that's okay because this thread is kind of tight around my wrist. So that little bit of slack is going to open up and make this sit about right. Okay, so I'm going to very carefully undo this if I can without knotting it up. And I've ascertained that this will connect right to the clasp. So let me get it down tighter. What Emily is also saying, which is smart, she says that the knot at the outside of a bead tip makes the bead tip end in a crooked fashion, right? So it skews it off to the left or the right. And it may slip inside the bead tip if the hole is large enough, right? So it's best not to have that connection, that little space in between. The knot can also wear against the metal, Janice pointed out, and it could be a weak point on this necklace instead of being a strong point. I'm going to come in and just really gently, I don't want to collapse the hook, right? There needs to be movement here, but I need that end of the hook of the end tip to sit right on the inside, or else this clasp is just going to fall right off. Okay, so that's it. And when I close it up, I will put it probably right there. I'll get these even a little. Let me give this just a little bit more of a trim so it's not so much in the way. But tomorrow I'll come in and clip it just a little bit more closely. But see, look at that ending. Look at that great closure. We've got a couple of little charms there for accent. I have got 1 or 2 last lone pearls that I could also wire wrap and attach in here. I could just wire wrap it like, I could get it like maybe there, or I could wire wrap them off of this link too if I felt like I needed to use every single pearl, right? So that's it. Okay. So let's take a look. I'm going to also show you how it might look. I'm going to get rid of my scarf so we can wrap it around here. But you can find all of, while I'm doing this, let me go over here and show you this slide. As you've been watching, if you're watching over on YouTube or if you're watching on our Facebook feed, please go ahead and if you like and share and heart these videos, it really helps other people find these broadcasts. And we really love sharing the bead knowledge with everyone. So each like and share and thumbs up, especially on YouTube, and a follow of our YouTube channel just helps everybody find us. Okay, so you can just under the screen, right, the thumbs up there, the like on the video always helps. So it would be really great to have you guys do that. We really appreciate it. You know, we're just a small business here in Redwood City, California, so we really appreciate all of your support, and it really allows us to do all of the things that we love to do, namely teaching you how to make things from pretty beads. Okay, so if you can also jump on over to beadshop.com for information on the project and the products from this broadcast. This one is called Hillside, which reminds me of the hills, the green hills and the lupins that grow and bloom in the spring around my hometown of Gilroy, right? So you can sign up for our newsletter. It's right on the homepage of our website for all of the latest discounts, giveaways, and new products. We have a lot of new stuff coming down the pike. But let me show you how this wraps around the neck here. So you can see I've got my end, my closure right here. And I can go through and around twice like this. And I can close it up like so. And this makes a great doubled over layering piece like this. Or I can get it a little bit tighter around my neck like this, and I think I can wrap it one more time. Except I have it, the clasp in my left hand and not my right, but that's okay. I think I can close it right here. And then you would have this dangle wherever, right? Can I get it in there? I can't. Let me get it. Come on. Where's my dresser? I really can't do it. Watching me don my jewelry. Gosh, there we go. Okay, it's done. Here we go. And you can see here, like you can have that little dangle come wherever you want it to be. So this will wrap about 3 times, as much as 3 times around your neck. Or you can wear it long as a layering piece, or you can wrap it around your wrist, whatever works for you. And I think it looks great. I love it on thread. I really think that these floats are really fun. Don't stress yourself out over it. They're so easy to make, right? Just get yourself some silk with the needle. As again, I use the size 4 and the freshwater pearls or whatever it is that you love. But it's just a fun, really great piece. And don't be afraid of using a vibrant thread, okay? The thread that I had chosen originally for this piece, I'd originally chosen a gray thread for this, and it just didn't sing. And Drea was helping me write up the materials for this piece, and she goes, use purple. And I was all, yeah, of course, use purple. And it looks great, the contrast. So don't be afraid to use a colored thread, whatever color works for you. Okay, so thank you again for joining us today. I really appreciate it, all of these wonderful viewers here on our live broadcasts. Remember tomorrow, we don't usually broadcast on Thursday, but we're doing some practice broadcasting with our multi-screen system. So I'm going to have Brittany and maybe Emily, who knows? And we're going to play around with that. So that's going to be at about 2:30 p.m. Our time, Pacific time, right? So So I'm going to put up a little reminder so you'll see that. So hopefully very soon we'll have some special guests here on the live broadcast. And then I'll be here regular time on Friday, 10:30 a.m. Pacific time for Free Tip Friday. I've got some fun stuff cooked up for you for Friday as well. So thank you again so very, very, very much for your support. It means the world to us. And we're in the middle of August, kids. We're moving through this 2020. So stay safe, wear your mask, wash your hands, keep that social distance, and I will see you soon right here on Beadshop Live. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.